right. Well, I think the first thing we should talk about, because I'm sure everyone's going to be talking about it, it's going to be only a matter of time before the internet just explodes off this one. Kid Rock was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and of course, they addressed the Bud Light controversy or situation. I don't call it a controversy. I'll get to that in a minute. But they addressed the situation, and Joe just flat out asked. And so I'll play you the clip that Rogan posted on YouTube, and I'll let you kind of make your own interpretations, but I'm going to give you something ahead of time. So when that whole thing dropped, the one thing that I said, and the one thing that we said on this podcast is we kind of felt like Kid Rock was not as serious as everyone was making it out to be. And I kind of felt like he was trolling the situation. I kind of felt like he was looking for attention, and he got it. Now, was he looking for the type of attention he got? Maybe not. But I think the one thing that he and Rogan that you'll find throughout this clip, and I'm not going to play the whole clip, I'm going to try to play bits and pieces, but I think the one thing you'll find throughout this clip is that the one thing they do is place the sole blame on sort of the outburst of controversy and the level that it reached on everyone but who should have been blamed. And you'll find out in a minute. But essentially, they're blaming the internet. Let's get into it, and then we'll go from there. Here we go. Kid Rock on Joe Rogan.
So what's it like being the dude who took out Bud Light?
Oh.
Let's get right to
Didn't
it.
take him
Let's
out.
get right to it. We were going to bring a few cases in here for you. Switch sunglasses.
Fuck, I'll drink it. I don't give a shit. Two kinds of beer in this world, cold and free. I like them both.
There's an important distinction to make here. Just because the stock price dropped and everyone reacted to that, and I know you saw all the media stories covering that, and the one thing to understand is not the first time for Anheuser-Busch or Bud Light, won't be the last time, but also as someone who lives and grew up in the home of Anheuser-Busch, I said from the beginning they were going to be just fine. Now, you'll find throughout this clip, and you'll find throughout other Joe Rogan clips, other episodes of his podcast, especially those with Shane Gillis, who never stopped drinking Bud Light, neither did Kid Rock, by the way, that he'll kind of go, oh, well, Bud Light rebounded because they did this deal with the UFC, and you, Shane Gillis, are working with Bud Light. It's like, no, Bud Light was going to be fine regardless of those things. Also, if you assume just because Bud Light caught a little controversy in the right-wing media because they gave a few cans to a trans influencer with her face on it, you can't really be that gullible or that naive or that stupid, right? You can't really believe that Bud Light was going to tank as a product because a trans influencer did a 5-minute video, not even a 5-minute, I think it was 2 minutes, 2-minute video thanking Bud Light for putting her face on the can, right? So I said long before any of this really even took off, it's like Bud Light's going to be fine. I live in St. Louis. I live 10 minutes from the brewery. They're going to be just fine. I know us people in middle America, we don't matter, but believe me, people still drank Bud Light in states like the one that I live in and the surrounding states. It just so happens that the news cycle picked up on this. And when the news cycle picks up on anything and catches steam, there's going to be a negative reaction and a negative impact on revenue, on sales, on influence in those other markets. It's only natural. It happens. That's the world we live in now. We're reactionary as people. We're not proactive as people. We don't look up the stories. We don't look up the news. We don't look up the facts. Kid Rock is going to give you some facts in this clip.
Man, I was just having fun, to be honest with you.
Oh, were you?
I mean, I was pissed, like, but
yeah,
it wasn't like it was going to wreck my day, let alone my life.
You were pissed. Okay, we'll keep going. Seems like it wrecked his day. Now, if he was just having fun, he's a good actor.
If I was just kind of like, what the fuck are they doing?
But
like,
you were the straw that broke the camel's back.
I became the face of it, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not the Pied Piper to sit around and think like people follow what Kid Rock does. I just became the face of it.
Yeah, but they kind of do. They kind of
No.
do. Listen, man, when you got so upset that you were fucking machine gunning.
Throwing a tantrum with a machine gun.
You machine gun cases
They want
of
to
Bud Light.
They want to let guys play girls sports.
That was.
So it's good to be self-deprecating. However, Dylan Mulvaney has nothing to do with trans women playing sports with other women. Has nothing to do with it. Bud Light never perpetuated the idea. They never said that they're behind that idea. It had nothing to do with it. You did that, and the media did that, and those that backed you on this whole idea did that. Bud Light never said that. Now, they did make some terrible mistakes, and the marketing person did come out and say some stupid things that didn't need to be said, to be honest with you. We're going to get away from frat culture. I got news for you. If you peddle beer, you're backing frat culture. That's just what it is. I'm drinking beer right now. It's not an Anheuser-Busch product. Sorry. PBR. Wasn't in a frat, but I like beer. So the whole thing was goofy. And for this guy to come on here and go, well, I was just having fun. I wasn't serious, but then he was self-deprecating, but then he brings up a whole nother issue that has nothing to do with anything. Now, I'm not going to get into how I feel about trans athletes in sports. I've talked about it on this podcast. I'm not going to do it for this one. Save it for another one.
And that was really it. If there's one moment that they look back on and fucking go, shit!
Oh,
It's
dude,
that
I've
moment.
talked to him about it.
I know you have.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
you were there at the UFC fight.
Yeah, and I met that dude, the CEO.
Brendan.
He's a good guy, man.
We've become friends.
He's a good guy.
He's a
real
great
good
guy.
guy.
After 5 minutes of talking to him, I'm with Trump there in Dana's green room. I go to Trump. I go, see that dude behind me? I go, that's the CEO of Bud Light or Anheuser-Busch. And Trump's like, you want to go talk to him? Which in my mind, Trump said, you want to go fuck with him? And I'm like, yes.
That's the other thing that's annoyed me about this whole thing. It's kind of like an ignorance to the whole issue is that people are conflating Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch. Bud Light is an Anheuser-Busch product. Bud Light is not its own entity. It's its own product, but it's not its own entity. So other people, again, when people would talk about this and they would go, well, Bud Light's stock's down. Bud Light's in trouble. Are they? Or is Anheuser-Busch in trouble? And believe me, they weren't. They're not. They never will be.
Absolutely. So we go over there, we're talking to him. We actually had a great conversation. And at some point, he was telling me how he got the video. And he was actually down in Texas doing some hunting. And I'm like, we talk and talk, and I'm not going to share all our conversation. That'd probably be inappropriate. But I'm like, dude, you seem like somebody I'd fucking be friends with, that I'd hang out with. He's like, you would. That's what I'm saying. And I'm like, well, come to Nashville. Come visit me.
Why does any of this matter? Who cares if you two would be friends? It's not going to change what he does. It's not going to change what you do. Zero. It's not going to change. And if the two of you were spotted hanging out together in Nashville, it's not going to change anything. People are still going to drink Anheuser-Busch products, one of those being Bud Light. It's not going to change anything.
We stopped selling it at the mothership because nobody's buying it.
Did you?
It got that bad.
You know, what's going on there?
It's nuts. It's stupid. I think it's stupid, and Shane Gillis brought it back
I love
a lot.
Shane. Shane's a buddy.
He's the best.
Yeah.
He brought it back a lot, because he never stopped drinking it. And,
He brought it back with you, and he changed your mind, and he changed your audience's mind. There are a lot more people in this world that drink Bud Light other than you, Shane Gillis, and your audience. No disrespect to Shane. I like Shane. I think he's funny. I would love to have a beer with him and have a conversation with him. Never going to happen. But Shane didn't bring Bud Light back. What Shane did was be true to who he is. He's a Midwesterner. Is Pennsylvania considered Midwest? I don't know. Close enough. But he stayed true to who he is. He didn't stop drinking it because he's been drinking it his entire life, or his entire drinking life. He wasn't going to stop just because somebody bitched about some trans influencer having 2 minutes of glory on social media. Who cares? Shane Gillis was one of those people, and good for him. I think that's why he's flourishing in this world of guys like this who contradict themselves and show themselves as hypocrites nonstop. He stays true to what he is. It's just and that's what you have to do. Shane Gillis, could you imagine if somebody who was seen on this podcast drinking 20 Bud Lights per episode all of a sudden went, I'm not going to drink it anymore. That trans person really bothered me. Do you think he ever had those thoughts? I don't think he did. Why would he? Who cares? He likes the beer. And do you really think it crossed his mind that, Shane supports trans lifestyle now, or trans this and trans that because he drinks Bud Light? No.
it's slowly making its way back, and I think the UFC helps a lot too. But they took a big hit.
One of the things I told them was, I was like, I go from the outside looking in, guys, as a friend, somebody who doesn't want to see this brand hurt and destroyed anymore. Like, you got smacked on the ass.
They weren't hurt and destroyed.
In a pretty hard spanking. I was like, but I don't want to hold your head underwater and drown this fucking company, put people out of work and that shit. It's like, you got the message. And
you weren't going to drown the company, Kid Rock. You just weren't. And no matter who you had on your side, wasn't going to drown that company. Who the fuck do they think they were dealing with? This wasn't a mom and pop brewery or a microbrewery. This is Anheuser-Busch.
And it's clear. I wish people knew these guys running the company because they're great fucking guys.
They
But
don't need to know
I
them.
said, I said, you know, there's just a percentage of these fucking trolls on the left and on the right. They're like, I'm so empowered by the
You were trolling. You are on the internet. Here's the best part coming up. Here we go. Here's who the blame gets placed on.
internet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna piss and bitch and moan and, you know, I have a voice. It's like, go fuck yourself. All right, cut it out. Like, if anyone's still spending time on this, you clearly are fucking bored. Find something better to do.
Yeah, it's definitely a pursuit of losers. But the problem is those losers can actually affect businesses. And that's what they know. They know now that it's
Kid Rock, you used the internet to put out your message about your displeasure with Bud Light. Joe Rogan, you used the internet to broadcast this show. Now they're all losers. All of your fans are losers. How many of your fans do you think drink Bud Light?
possible, both on the right and on the left.
But they need to know there's so many more businesses in this country deserving of that treatment.
Right.
Fucking Ben and Jerry's, Starbucks, Target. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
And I don't care if they're left wing or right wing. It's just their fucking ideology.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when they cross that line and signal to people like myself and many others that they were okay with this transgender thing and more so at like, is this going to get directed at my kids? So you
Right.
think fucking men should be in women's sports? Like,
Had nothing to do with it.
That's
Again, with the sports, it had nothing to do with it. Dylan Mulvaney doesn't play sports. It has nothing to do with it. This is what I hate about this. They're taking one thing and saying it's another, and it's not. We could probably stop there. That's the part I wanted to get to, where they blamed the internet. I just get annoyed when these guys don't realize that, hey, you're a part of the internet too. Your content reaches the internet. So you are a part of the internet too. When they're going to realize that, I have no idea. For Joe Rogan to come on here, I mean, for months and months, he talked about how Bud Light was dead in the water, talked about how they made all these terrible decisions, talked about this, talked about that. Here he is now drinking Bud Light with Kid Rock, joking about it. It's the most hypocritical thing for a guy who, all things considered, lives in a bubble, doesn't understand who his fans are. And if he did, he would realize that saying that it's the pursuit of losers for them to take down, for them to keep talking about Bud Light. It's like, well, you have one of those people on your show right now. He's the one that inspired all of this. So is your guest a loser too? I don't know. Very, very, very silly. As I said, Bud Light was not going to be in trouble. They weren't in trouble. They made a bad PR mistake, like all companies do. And all companies with that power, all companies with the power that Anheuser-Busch has, they recover. And they did. They'll be just fine. They were going to be just fine. They didn't need the UFC. I would love to tell Joe this to his face. They didn't need the UFC. It helps. UFC is a global company and they're flourishing right now as well, but they didn't need them. You know how many other leagues have Bud Light shit all over the stadiums, all over the banners, all over the fields, all over the courts, all over everywhere? Plenty. Does the UFC help? Sure, it adds to the impact of how strong that brand and how strong that company is. But that's just that. Let's move on to something fun. So I found something interesting today, and we'll find out if it feels familiar. Just think to yourself if it feels familiar to something you might have heard recently. Here we go. And I want to point this out. I did not discover this on my own. I will get to who discovered it or how I discovered it through whoever discovered it from whoever. But anyway, here we go. All right, so that's from a show based out of Canada, I believe, called Franklin the Turtle. Okay, now let me show you how I discovered this.
This ain't Texas, ain't no hold'em. So lay out. Hey, it's Franklin. Ooh, coming into your house. One step to the right. Hey, it's Franklin. Ooh, coming to my house. Hey, it's Franklin. Hey.
Wow, pretty close. So that, of course, was Beyonce Texas Hold'em, which has 7.7 million views. It came out 11 days ago. Wow. Let's pause that. A little bit different.
This ain't Texas. Ain't no hold 'em. So lay your cards down, 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 down.
We, of course, played this on the last episode. It's the same notes, it's the same chord structure, but it's a little bit different. So I won't go in. I just thought that was funny. I won't go too hard on that, but it's the same chord structure. Very similar. Something to think about there. And I brought up Led Zeppelin and Spirit. Hey, yeah, you know, let's just do that for fun. Led Zeppelin very famously has been accused of ripping off the song Stairway to Heaven. So this is very famous, and people have talked about it a bunch. We've never talked about it on this show, but so let's get into it. So Led Zeppelin is famously accused of ripping off Stairway to Heaven, probably their most successful or famous song. That's how I discovered Led Zeppelin. I mean, I listened to that song on repeat. I found an old cassette, and this is long after CDs had come out, but I found an old cassette, and we had an old cassette player, record player / cassette player at my house growing up. Found an old cassette, dusty, at a pawn shop, maybe, or one of those places like that. I said, "Oh, Led Zeppelin. I've heard of them. I gotta put that in. I gotta play that." And I looked at it. It's Stairway to Heaven. I gotta. But then I found out that they supposedly ripped it off, and that really bummed me out. So you be the judge. So this, of course, is Stairway to Heaven. Okay. Here's Spirit. Again, same chord structure, same notes, but it's different. You know, I have a hard time. I have a hard time saying that that's the same, that they ripped that off. But they were accused of many other songs, I think, that are actually more obvious than Spirit. 8 Led Zeppelin songs that rip off other songs. Ooh. So apparently they ripped off Whole Lotta Love. Let's get into that. Another famous song.
Perhaps Zeppelin's most blatant lifting is their 1969 track, Whole Lotta Love. The lyrics and vocal phrasing of Whole Lotta Love were lifted from Muddy Waters' 1962 track, You Need Love, written by Willie Dixon.
Baby, way down inside, woman, you need love.
Way down inside, honey, you need it.
However, it wasn't actually the Muddy Waters recording of You Need Love that Zeppelin were lifting from. It was actually the Small Faces cover of You Need Love that Robert Plant was channeling when he came up with the vocal for Whole Lotta Love.
Jesus.
You need cooling, baby, I'm not fooling.
As you can hear, not only are the lyrics near identical, but the melody, vocal phrasing and style are also very similar too.
Yeah, no shit. They owe them some money. Bring It On Home versus Bring It On Home.
Whole Lotta Love isn't the only Zeppelin song you will find Willie Dixon's name on. Dixon is also credited on Zeppelin's 1969 track, Bring It On Home.
Bring it on home to you.
In fact, the song Bring It On Home was originally written by Willie Dixon in 1963 and performed by Sonny Boy Williamson II.
Gonna bring it on home to you.
6 years later, as a tribute to Sonny Boy Williamson, who had died in 1965, Zeppelin recorded their own version of Bring It On Home, however interspliced Dixon's song with their own original Zeppelin composition.
So this is the one thing, and that's what Zeppelin defenders will do is, you know, they were a blues band, and it was typical in blues for kind of you to like chop up things and kind of bring, you know, you would essentially pull from your influences and bring it into your songs. And I think they got away with it for so long. And I think once music had kind of taken a turn and rock and roll had gotten away from blues and the blues riff, especially on guitar. Things changed and people started looking at this a little bit differently, but let's look at some other ones here. The fuck do I know? The Lemon Song. Is this another Willie Dixon song?
Interestingly, when Arch Music sued Zeppelin in '72, it wasn't only over Bring It On Home. The case also included Zeppelin's Lemon Song, which Arch Music claimed lifted from another song they controlled, Killing Floor by Howling Wolf.
Oh.
And this is no surprise considering that the Lemon Song actually started as a Led Zeppelin cover of Killing Floor.
I should have quit you a long time ago. I should have quit you a long time ago.
In 1968, Zeppelin began performing Killing Floor live, and over the next year it developed into what would become the Lemon Song. Although Lemon Song has diverged from Killing Floor lyrically and style-wise, the two songs are still very similar. As I mentioned earlier, the Zeppelin track Dazed and Confused started as a folk song written and performed by Jake Holmes in 1967.
I'm dazed and confused, hanging on by a thread.
Been dazed and confused for so long, it's not true.
The Yardbirds, who were Jimmy Page's band prior to Zeppelin, covered Holmes' song the same year. And as you...
So again, pulling from influences, I don't know. I've heard people break this down and talk about it before, and they were much more adamant about Zeppelin or Thieves. But I've never once written a song that had it. I very much was. I will say. I've never, in any of the projects I've been a part of, I've never written a song where you would ever go, oh, that sounds a little bit like this. You might say, oh, I think I can tell what your influences are, but you never go, that's a ripoff of this song. And that's because of the time that I started writing music. I think back then, I think it was, like they said, they covered these bands. They pulled inspiration from these bands. It was what it was. It's tough. With the Beyonce one, again, it's the same chords, same chord structure. It's the same feel. It's the same thing, but it's not the same. So you run into this a lot, and it just, especially in pop music, they borrow shit. There are only so many chords. There are only so many chord progressions, and there is a basic chord progression that works for pop music. It's the 4-chord song, and it now works in country music. Bands have tried it and have been successful, and other bands have tried it and they haven't been. But here's what it is.
And we are the Axis of Awesome.
And I'm Benny.
Yeah, we've been a comedy rock band for close to 40 years now, and all that time we've never had a hit. And
Yeah, but you guys know why.
Why?
Because we never wrote a 4-chord song.
What's that? What's a 4-chord song, Benny?
Well, if you want all the greatest hits from the past 40 years, just use 4 chords. Same 4 chords for every song. It's dead simple to write a pop hit.
Just 4?
Yeah, these 4. Here. 1, 2, 3, 4 chords.
Sorry, let me get this straight, Chicken Little. What you're trying to say is you can take those 4 chords, repeat them, and pump out every pop song ever. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Fuck off.
Yeah, fuck off, Chicken Little.
Just listen. Do you recognise this?
Yeah, that is Don't Stop Believing by Journey.
It's a great song.
One of the best.
Very original.
There's a few more that fit. Check it out. My life is brilliant. My love is pure. I saw an angel. Of that I'm sure.
Well, that's just 2 songs that are similar. That's
forever young.
What that one?
3 songs.
I wanna be forever young. I won't hesitate.
No more, no more.
No more. It cannot wait. I'm yours. This is the way you left me. I'm not pretending. No love, no hope, no glory, no happy ending. 'Cause you were amazing. We did amazing things. If I could, then I would. I'd go wherever you will go. Feel the love tonight, and she will be loved. Yeah, she will.
Kind of crazy to think about, but it works. It works. It works.
Hard to double time?
Double time.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me.
Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner.
That's the
You get the point. So again, when you have only so many things you can do on musical instruments and with compositions, when it comes to pop, when it comes to these genres of music that require you to write something that is palatable to the regular ear, you're going to have similarities. It just is what it is. You know, I think people often kind of make the mistake of comparing like a guy like Vanilla Ice, who was sued by Queen and David Bowie for Ice Ice Baby. It's just he didn't give permission to sample it. And he tried to play it off like, oh no, that's our song. Like, no, it's not. You sampled that and you didn't get permission. You know, that's the one thing about rap music is they sample all of these tracks, but you gotta go through the proper channels. You gotta make sure you can do it. Now, if you're a band and you rip something off and it's a clear rip off, and I don't remember, I'm not gonna Google it. I don't remember what it is. I think it's like 8 consecutive bars of music or notes of music has to be line up in a way that's how you can get sued, or legally speaking, I don't remember what it is. It doesn't matter. It's so dumb because at the end of the day, originality only goes as true as the artist who's performing it. You can make it your own and it can still sound like something else. Very possible. So with that said, let's talk about new music of the week, and then we're going to do something new. We're going to do a throwback of the week, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But new music of the week. So we talked about the band Sum 41 and how they're going to be, you know, essentially retiring after they do these run of shows they're doing and putting out this new record, which I think is a bummer. I think they're getting out at the wrong time. That's kind of the thing that we talked about the most is like, man, pop punk among other genres has had a revival with the younger generation, because right now nostalgia is just so huge. You got really young kids getting into music that was popular when I was a teenager and in my early 20s. And I think they're getting out at the wrong time. I think they can capitalize on that. And they are right now, but at the same time, they have plenty more to give. And I think it's very clear with their new song. I just have a feeling that this band's gonna find a reason to keep going. I really do. I'm not saying it's like a publicity stunt saying we're gonna retire or anything like that. I just feel like they're so good. They write such great songs, you know, not just for the genre. I just think these are good songs. They write great hooks. And I don't really see a world where we don't have this band releasing music like this still. Maybe, again, if that's true, that's a bummer, but they're just so good at this. I also can't help but think every time I watch a video of theirs, or, you know, just thinking about where the lead singer was a couple of years ago on Death's Door, and look at him now. I mean, it's been more than a couple of years now at this point, but look at him now. He looks good. He looks back to the way he should. And I kind of feel like, does he need this? Does he really need to stop doing this? Maybe that's why. Maybe it's you know, the guy was a brutal alcoholic, and, you know, alcohol almost killed him. So is that why? You know, who knows? I'm not going to speculate. And again, I'm just happy the guy's doing okay and they're putting out great music like this, but it is what it is. It sucks. It's a great hook. It's just classic pop punk, classic Sum 41, classic pop punk. It's just good shit. Just good. It's good shit. And I understand this is not for everybody, but believe me, kids today, because of TikTok and the emergence of just different genres and old sounds and new sounds coming together on TikTok, a band like this is just they're hitting a new audience. And like I said, it might not be the right time to go, but who knows? Again, what do I know?
Well, maybe I can find some faith. I can't spend my life just waiting on a twist of fate.
That was gross.
Done with lies and all that you gotta say. 'Cause in my mind, it's more than I could.
Classic.
Been now done with lies. It's everything that you gotta say. I've opened my mind, but it's more than I could ever take. And if I had more time, well, maybe I could find some faith. I can't spend my life just waiting on a twist of fate. So
It's a great band. It's a great song. It's like I said, if they really are getting out of here, gonna be sad to see them go. No, another thing I want to get into is Finn McKenty, who we talk about a lot on the show. He has a podcast and channel called Punk Rock MBA. He talked about nu metal recently, and I really enjoyed his take on nu metal. I generally enjoy the things he has to say about music. I remember when I discovered him, I was a little bit skeptical about the guy, and not because of the dude, not because of him as a dude, but some of the things he said about music and just kind of his general essence when he talked about music. I feel like he had a wealth of knowledge when it came to music, but sorry, Finn, he came off a little bit snobby to me. But then as I kept watching his videos, I realized, oh no, wait, this guy listens to everything. He genuinely explores music and tries to get to the bottom of every genre, what makes a genre work, what makes a band work, why is a band popular, how does a band become popular, what platform is a band becoming popular on. So anyway, he does his homework and he knows his shit. And I really appreciate him for that, because there are some guys who just like to talk shit for the sake of talking shit, and they're just snobby just to be snobby. And I won't name names, but I discovered that, hey, my first impression of him was wrong. I don't really think he's snobby necessarily. I think he speaks the truth, and I think he says how he feels about things. And I think sometimes he comes off as brutally honest, and that might hurt some people's feelings. But I think it comes from a place of curiosity. I think he really wants to know what's going on. But he recently talked about nu metal, genre of music we obviously talk about a lot on this show, and he had a really good take on it. And the whole idea of the video was, why was nu metal so hated? And there's a piece of it in here that I found very important. So this came out a day ago, but I felt like there's a bit of this in here that is so important to think about. And the way that he broke it down was perfect.
But uptight metalheads weren't the only people who hated nu metal. It also got a huge amount of hate from the media, who basically looked at it as an example of everything that was wrong with the world. For example, the British magazine NME called it the worst musical genre of all time, but I think this description from The Guardian really sums up how music journalists felt about nu metal at the time. It had the ugliest bands, the ugliest fashions. Its natural home was vast concrete car parks across America, where acts like Limp Bizkit and Slipknot stomped, swaggered, and growled before audiences that, according to their most vehement critics, had a tendency towards sexual assault, rape, and arson.
Okay. So he's going to give you his take. Let me give you mine on that. I hated shit like this, by the way. I still do. These snobby writers, in the movie Almost Famous, that kid goes on the road with that band and he really wants to write a genuine sort of like, here's this approach to the rock band, the band that's trying to make it big. And they rebel in the beginning because he's rock writer, and rock writers trash all bands and they trash all things that they don't want to see get successful. It's still that way today. You know, if you are a critic, a rock critic or a music critic, are you really looking at it through the lens of the music listener, or are you looking at it through the lens of the music hater? Meaning, are you nitpicking and pinpointing things that you know you're already going to dislike because they fit into a world or a genre, or they have a sound that's easy for you to hate on? I appreciate when a journalist goes out of their way to listen to something new, meaning something they don't listen to all the time, and gives it an honest review and just doesn't take this snarky, condescending, sarcastic approach. And first of all, the worst thing you can do as a music writer is hate on the band's fans. Hey man, what about your fans? What can we say about yours? They're keeping you, they're the fuel that's keeping the engine going for them just as much as it is you. So for you to talk about the fans like that and sort of pigeonhole them into this one thing is ridiculous. Well, let's hear what Finn has to say. He probably will articulate it better than me. I'm flying off the seat. I'm flying by the seat of my pants.
There's a few things in that quote that I think are worth looking at on a closer level. For example, how the writer said, the ugliest bands and the ugliest fashions. There's an undertone to that that doesn't really sit right with me.
I mean, I'm gonna lie, I'm not the best looking dudes in some of these bands, but the fashion, hey man, it's coming back. You can't get a pair of Jinkos for under $300 right now. Just pointing that out. Thanks, TikTok.
Although I guess it's actually not really an undertone at all. He just said the quiet part loud.
Yeah,
this smug indie journalist saying that nu metal sucks because the fans were ugly and they didn't dress right. Like, what is that other than the snobby, pretentious music critic version of Mean Girls?
So that's against the rules, and you can't sit with us. Whatever. Those rules aren't real. They were real that day I wore a vest. Because that vest was disgusting. You can't sit with us!
And then there's also the second part of that quote that says, its natural home was the vast concrete car parks across America, which I think speaks to the not so subtle classism that really undergirded a lot of the hate for nu metal. And let's talk.
So this is the thing that always bothered me then and still now with the disrespect of nu metal. I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute here. So I consider myself late to nu metal, meaning it had been around for a couple of years before I really started digging into some of the bands. I'd listened to Rage Against the Machine, but they had not really been called nu metal back when I started listening to them yet. And I discovered my first nu metal band by a kid. So it's important. So that what this writer talked about, the concrete parks or whatever. So again, essentially, middle of America, trailer park trash listens to nu metal. So the way that I discovered nu metal, I went to a private high school, very expensive private high school. Very important to point out that I grew up in a working class family. We did not have a lot of money. My dad worked his dick off to send me to that private school so that I could have better education, better life, whatever. Here I am. But I was generally speaking around people who were kids who were come from well-off families with plenty of money. Their lives were pretty much, the path was paved. For me, it was on me. Go to the school, do well, figure it out. Those kids, there was a plan all along. They were just privileged kids, and there's nothing wrong with that. They came from money. But I learned about nu metal from one of those privileged kids. He was one of these kids. He was an athlete, played multiple sports, was popular. You know, he came from a family that had money, but he, for whatever reason, was into, at the time, whatever he believed to be counterculture or like sort of rebellious against what his parents would like. Even though he got good grades, he played sports, he fit the part of what that school was, but he listened to a lot of this more underground, aggressive metal and nu metal at the time. What I didn't know was nu metal, but he introduced me to Deftones, which is one of my favorite bands, top 2 bands of all time to this day. Deftones changed my life. And I know Finn doesn't like Deftones. I would love to talk to him about Deftones. But he introduced me to Deftones. He gave me a ride home. He gave me not a ride home. He gave me a ride to a place where I was meeting other people to then get a ride home. But he gave me a ride from school to a place where I was meeting other people. And in the car, he played Deftones' first record and he put it on. I was like, dude, what is this? You listen to this? And I wasn't making fun of him because at the time I was drowning in hip hop. That's all I listened to. And I go, you listen to this? He goes, yeah, man. You haven't heard of these guys? And I go, no. And he goes, oh, you want to hear some other stuff? I'm like, sure. And so we listened to Bored by Deftones, and then he put in Life is Peachy by Korn. Started playing that. I was like, man, I can't believe you listen to this. And he's like, yeah, it's, so started talking about it, and he introduced me to a few other things. And so that's how I learned about it. So this idea that only the kids in trailer parks and middle America, I am from middle America, and so is he, but again, came from money. The idea that it's only white, well, Finn will bring this up too, I won't say it, but this idea that it only came from these sort of lower affluent places, it's bothered me when that started being said about nu metal, and is still said about nu metal to this day. Let's let Finn talk about it. He had time to think about this. I didn't. I'm doing it on a whim.
Which I think speaks to the not so subtle classism that really undergirded a lot of the hate for nu metal. And let's talk about why that was the case. Most genres in rock start out as an underground movement in some place like New York, LA, or London, and it's initially only on the radar of hipsters and other people who make it their business to decide what's cool. For example, punk coming out of places like CBGB's in New York, or decades later, The Strokes. But nu metal wasn't like that. Like that quote kind of gets at, nu metal wasn't from anywhere cool. It was from what those smug critics would call flyover country, meaning the parts of America that these coastal elites would rather just fly over because they're too cool to even set foot there. Like Slipknot was from Iowa, Limp Bizkit was from Jacksonville, Korn was from Bakersfield, which is in California, but kind of might as well be Iowa. And when you think about kind of the archetypal nu metal fan, it's a blue-collar kid from someplace like Youngstown, Ohio, who doesn't know or care who the Velvet Underground or Ziggy Stardust are. He just wants to put on his Discman and listen to break stuff because he's pissed off at the world. And
see, now that's a stereotype that I don't agree with necessarily either, because I did grow up, again, in middle America with kids who were listening to this stuff, but were also listening to punk, hardcore, hip hop. They were listening to things that came from other places that hipsters, whatever, called cool, but they still listened to it. They were called music enthusiasts, but they didn't just shun nu metal. And I think that's the point to make here, is it's like you can't just bypass it just because it comes from a different place or a certain place in the country.
As we've seen over the years, the one group of people that it's socially acceptable to just absolutely shit on is them. That blue-collar crowd from the middle of the country, or as people back then called them, white trash. People don't use that word anymore, but you can kind of tell that they would like to. And ironically, that sort of disdain and disgust that came through in the media actually only made nu metal more popular, because it made the fans correctly feel that the world was out to get them and look down on them. The fans actually found strength in the disdain from the critics, and bonded over being those white trash fuck-ups that nobody liked or wanted to be around. For example, that is exactly what the Slipknot song Pulse of the Maggots is about.
We fight, so no one can fight us. We live, no one can stop us. We push too far.
And there was a second narrative about nu metal that basically painted it as this like frat bro music. As one so-called journalist said, it's considered the soundtrack for entitled white guys who fancied them the stars of their own coming-of-age movies, like a playlist of suburban self-pity but set to a funky bass line.
So here's the and I'm going to stop there. And he makes a great point where it's like, well, if you look at the bands that are playing the music, none of them were frat bros, which is true. He brings up Jonathan Davis of Korn especially. And that's fine. And I agree with that. At the same time, I am from middle America. I did go to college. I did hang around frat guys. And these guys were listening to nu metal. They were also listening to punk rock. They were listening, like I said, hip hop. They were listening to a lot of stuff. It really was just about the party. And maybe that's anecdotal for me. And I understand that. But at the same time, you have to understand, this writer is just trying to make a statement about this writer is better than the music and better than the fans. And that's ultimately what was wrong with the people that criticized nu metal. They never really took an honest approach. They never looked at a band like Deftones or looked at a band like Korn and really listened to the music and thought about, all right, now wait a minute. Is this starting a movement? Is this starting something new? Or is this just simply something for frat bros to crush beer cans over their heads to? Both. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if you don't think that frat bros didn't put on the Ramones or didn't put on Jack Johnson or didn't put on John Mayer at parties, you're sorely mistaken, writer, whoever wrote this thing. I'm picking out this one person. We don't even know the person's name. But so that's what always bothered me about this. And I think the most important thing here is taking the honest approach to the music, not the style, not the aesthetic, the music. You know, he talked about, you know, these bands come from flyover states and middle America, but the top three, there are three of the biggest nu metal, and I'm using air quotes there, nu metal bands of all time come from fucking California. Korn, Papa Roach, and Deftones all come from California. Sacramento, Bakersfield, and Vacaville. Limp Bizkit, Jacksonville. I'm sorry, let's go number 4. PODs from San Diego, considered nu metal. So to pigeonhole it as this one thing never made sense. It's never gonna make sense. I just think ultimately it was a music that when it became popular, and I'm not blaming anyone for this, but when it became popular and you had bands like Limp Bizkit making the genre popular, it was easy for writers to go, really? This is the thing? You had Fred Durst up on stage with Christina Aguilera. You had Fred Durst on Howard Stern talking about how he had sex with Britney Spears. Why is that different than any pop star? Why aren't you writing that same way about pop music? Fred Durst was a pop star. He was. They sold millions and millions of records. So why aren't you saying that about the pop artist? Why aren't you saying that about a guy like, say, Robbie Williams, for instance, who was notoriously known for being, just being the misogynistic sort of, I'll do what I want, when I want to, who I want. But he had this fluffy sort of pop approach to his music, this sort of, I'm a pop darling thing. I came from a boy band, so you're supposed to love me. But the guy was a party animal. Probably still is. I don't know much about him anymore. But with that said, I thought that was an interesting video. Go check it out. Again, it's the Punk Rock MBA. He talks about nu metal. What I want to do now is just kind of do a throwback to nu metal and talk about a band that's not mentioned much. They very much flew under the radar when it came to nu metal. But I thought, really cool band. One that caught a little steam, never really went anywhere. But they came to our city and really put on a great show, and that's how I discovered them. I saw a video of them on MTV. I saw a music video, I should say, and I was immediately hooked. I bought the record, listened to the record, and I thought, this band's really good. I would love to see where they go, and it never really went anywhere. And it was kind of a bummer. But the band's called Pressure 4-5. But this was a band that, for when they came out, they had the backing of MTV. They had the backing of a lot of these places where it was like, this could be the next new band, because nu metal right now is at its height. Let's see what happens to this band. Unfortunately for them, it didn't really take off the way I think people thought it would. I guess there are a lot of variables that come into that. But anyway, let's listen to Pressure 4-5. This was their biggest song. It was called Beat the World. This is a live version of that song. Oh yeah, by the way, this is an MTV video. When MTV played rock, metal, punk, and hardcore. Remember those days?
This song's called Beat the World.
This is our throwback of the day. It's not Thursday, but I don't care.
You guys ready?
I mean, these middle America people, how dare they enjoy music like this? Jumping, moshing, having a good time. You fucking assholes. Always good when the girls scream.
Does it make you want to think about the tragic things in this life? If you want to cry, try to deny. Get out, it makes me want to die. Well, the biggest steps in this
So I think there's something important to say here too about this band is that, you know, again, they were pigeonholed into nu metal, but I thought they were more of a rock band. They definitely had the groovier guitars, groovier music like nu metal was known for. But vocally speaking, I mean, that's rock music. He's doing a little bit of screaming, but a lot of cleans. But this was what nu metal was turning into, were bands like this, where they kind of, you know, got a little less Korn, a little more Papa Roach, if you will. And I don't think that bands like this had a life to live, and maybe that's what happened to this band, because they weren't more of the sort of obvious nu metal version of what the music was. I think they kind of had this more sort of palatable approach to maybe the basic ear again. You know, little less aggressive, little more less aggressive. I don't know.
Away from all these chains that bind you, I got you at the wrist. Or does it make more sense to just go and make the scar yourself? Cause you like to see it bleeding, and you like the color red. To see the light, there's all the light, and the man is dancing this for. If you want to die, it's over now.
I think this is probably 2002, 2003, maybe.
If you want to beat the third world, might reach up and pull you down. If you want to fall you down, if you want to find the way, doors like the key is
Very polished, very produced, very clean, very good sounding.
If you want to be the world, might reach up
Great
and
hook.
hold you down. If you want to find the way, the door is like the key is rusted now. Rusted.
So that's Pressure 4-5, Beat the World. Good band, good song. Again, throwback. So there was another band that, and this is so funny, but so I used to get a lot of my new music ideas as far as who I should listen to from magazines, but I was a subscriber to Revolver magazine, used to be in the day. And they used to turn me on to a lot of new bands. And one of the bands I discovered through that magazine was Killswitch Engage. You know, I heard so many bands, Scary Kids, Scaring Kids, Lost Prophets. Oof. But another one I discovered through that magazine was a band called Vex Red, who got lumped into nu metal. But as I listened to this band's record, I immediately bought the record after I read about them. Love the record. I think it's one of the most underrated bands of the genre of the 2000s. But I think they got lumped into nu metal, and I thought they were something different. So this is a UK band that got lumped into the nu metal scene, but I thought they were doing something a little bit different, a little more alternative, a little more perhaps at times electronic, a little more indie, but they got lumped in. And this was the song that Revolver wrote about, or Revolver mentioned in their review, which turned me onto them. And you let me know in the comments if you feel this is nu metal. But so there's a band called Vex Red.
Just close your eyes and sleep.
So to me, a little more Nine Inch Nails, a little more stabbing westward, a little less Korn, but still very cool. Very cool. Cool band. Band's called Vex Red. Song's called The Closest. Go check it out.